Hello and welcome to Profiles in Risk. This is your host, Tony Cañas, and today I have with me Michael Trouillon, uh, owner at Insurance Agency Automation Associates. Michael, how's it going today?
Well, other than Technology Mondays, it's going good.
You are in Southern California, if I remember
Correct.
correctly.
Los
Uh,
Angeles, but Sherman Oaks is a specific community.
all right, so we're recording on October 28th, just before Halloween. So the rest of the country is starting the kind of cold period. I'm assuming LA is still beautiful weather-wise.
Well, today it's 69 degrees, so it's cool. But yeah, we're entering that cool streak.
All right, what is cold? Like January, February, like mid 50s, low 60s?
Yeah. Well, let's just say when I walk the dog in the morning, I'm still wearing shorts and no sweatshirt. So that's it. When it dips below 50 or into the 50s, I might switch to long sleeve pants or long pants. And then when it gets into low 50s and all that, I might put a sweatshirt or a small jacket on. But yeah,
Oh,
that's cold for most people in this area.
all right, all right. So so um so Michael, normally I say we always give the guest a chance to give the elevator pitch. Before uh, doing that, I'll introduce you a little bit. Basically, in my
Sure.
tribe of insurance nerds, at some point in the last, I don't know, 6 7 years, you emerged as as everybody's go-to AMS 360 guy, right? So basically in my mind, when I get calls from agencies or prospective agencies, and somebody's talking about processes, and needing to modernize an agency, I think of agency performance partners and Kelly Donahue
Yeah.
Piro, and somebody's having trouble with AMS 360. I think of you basically. Uh, so what is Insurance Agency Automation Associates?
Well, 15 years, 14 years ago, when I created the name, I said a distinctive name that tells what I do. And these days, man, I'd change it if I could. I can, but I'm not going to because I get a lot of people think I'm an insurance agency. Not.
Happens to all of us. So
Yeah,
even
it does. And there's no perfect name, right?
yeah.
There's no perfect name. Um, Basically, I've taken my nearly 25, 24 years of working AMS 360 and taken that experience and become a consultant and a trainer for use of AMS 360 and related products, things that kind of tag in with it, integrate in with it. So my main goal is cleaning up workflows. I sometimes call myself a workflow mechanic. And with other products that are using, I try to make it there's triggers like Agency Zoom. There's triggers that cause Agency Zoom to work. So I work on getting those triggers and that workflow set up so that those things work.
All right.
There's
So
much more to it, but that's the gist of it.
all right. So basically, AMS 360 by Vertafore, uh, arguably basically the second largest AMS. Um,
Correct.
so I'm guessing what 10,000 agencies are on
I
AMS 360.
don't know the numbers, but it's a significant number.
Okay. So if if it if I've got an agency and I'm on AMS 360, um, at what point is it that I'm likely to need help or you might be helpful?
Well, in the perfect scenario, when you're first starting on it and just prior to or at migration, it's the perfect starting point. I don't get there that often. Occasionally I do. And the reason is that we can get it set up right because as you go through the interview for migrating from any product, it doesn't matter, or just starting up, you got decisions you have to make. And the Vertipore reps can't always they can give you some information, but they're only allowed to say certain things. So, like for example, somebody says, how do you want your accounting set up? Accrual. There's two choices, but you want accrual. Trust me. I don't care how you file the taxes. Accrual is what you want. So things like that, and turning on different features. And sometimes we don't want to turn them all at once. So that's kind of where it is. Absent of that, which is my normal situation, I get people that are having problems with things, or they got new staff members that are just saying, I don't understand. And I've used 360 before. Why isn't it not working? Or things like that. And then I start with an assessment. I got two assessments going right now. In fact, Tony and I speaking earlier, I have a computer issue today. I'm supposed to have an assessment presentation tomorrow. I'm going to have to push that back a couple of days just to make sure I got everything the way I want it to be. Um, that assessment, I look at a lot of settings, I look at a lot of reports, and then I create a little workflow from a sheet, a presentation on that based on what I see and some standards that I look for, and make suggestions, and then we create a plan to fix those things and implement them. That's the normal. The other normal is you got a new employee starting and they need training and they don't know how to, you don't have internal trainers, or you do, but you got somebody that might train the wrong way. I start that person off and start from training depending on where their level is. I start determining, are they new user, new to insurance? I've had a couple of those. And then what are they going to do? And I train what they're going to do.
Okay.
That's the, no, and it goes from, there's a lot of little spider web tangents out from there.
Okay. So on the training side, um, it can be very a la carte. Like a single employee
That's right.
look remotely, no problem. Uh,
Yeah. The biggest training process I had in a few years was an agency that was acquired by another larger organization, moving them from Applied Epic to AMS 360. There were 60 people. I spent 3 weeks. I came in on Monday, went home on Friday in Louisville. Got to say it right. Louisville. I think that's how they say it. Kentucky. And with training personal lines, commercial lines teams, half a day each team. And it was interesting. So I love that. And it takes a little while to get down. And in that type of circumstance, it's a harder training because you got people that are migrating lock, stock, and barrel, 60 people. That's a lot. Uh, and I've done other smaller. Sometimes, most of the time, I'm training under 5 people at a time. But
all right. So getting MS360 set up, getting it running the way I want it to run. If it's running and I'm not loving it,
most effectively, yes.
and getting my people trained, whether it's one or
Well,
like the entire organization is transitioning from something
right,
else.
right.
All right. So
And
so
sometimes sorry to interrupt you. Sometimes it's like I had it happen last year. I get somebody saying, "Why am I seeing this data or not seeing this data in my reports, accounting or financial primarily?" And then we dive back into that and say, well, here's what you're seeing. Here's the cause of it, the root cause, if you will. And then we go back and fix that cause and get it to where. Now, that takes a while because, you got to you can either do a big project and go back and fix everything that's been done wrong for the last year, or you start moving forward. And both of those situations can work. It's just which way you want to go.
okay. How did you end up so deep into AMS 360? Are you a former agency owner, or how did it?
Never an owner. My first job out of high school was a file and mail clerk. The agency manager actually fired her son. Long story to that, and hired me. And then I met a producer who said he left the agency after about a year and a half while I was there. And he called me up and says, when can you come over here and work? And I said, Phil, I'm not looking for a job. I'm happy. I said, we'll put you in a commercial training program. And I said, okay, that got my eyes. And then met two other ladies there that coached me and mentored me, and continued up, became an assistant account manager, agency marketing manager, managed two different agencies, which were both about the same size, but vastly different. One was very financially solvent. The other was functionally bankrupt. And then moved into consulting from there.
Okay, so basically you did a lot of of the roles of an
Hmm.
agency other than running your own.
Correct.
And the IT side just cold to you, the systems side.
I don't know if IT, if that's what is the right one, because in the computer problems I had this morning, I called my friendly IT person who's somebody I went to high school with, so we go back a while. I know enough on the, don't ask me to configure a computer other than plugging things in and doing that. I say, leave that to the pros over there because I can learn so much I want to learn over here. So it's a little less than true IT, but procedure, process, and technology.
Okay. So what what does it look like when the agency is truly utilizing AMS 360 to the fullest extent? Once you've got them where you want them, what does it look like?
That's a very good question because there's a lot of different versions of that. But we'll start with the obvious. One place I like to start out with an agency is activities and documents. And people say, why do we want to go there? Because everything we do, we document it with an activity saying, here's what we did and why, and the document that supports that, like an email or it might be a policy. That allows us to read the story. And I like to start there and get that done so that way we get good documentation. We can see what's going on without having to look in 50 places. There's a bigger story to that. One thing that drives that a lot is I've had the distinction that I had an account that was handed to me as a producer that had a fire, knocked down, totally burned the premises down, that turned into a bad faith lawsuit against the old Golden Eagle Insurance because John maybe just said, I'm not paying that claim. Got deposed in that, and before it went to trial, they charged him with arson and testified in front of a judge and jury twice. Why twice? First time it was hung jury, second jury acquitted him. The span of time from the last day I handled that account to the when that last trial ended, 7 years. I had to review a paper file that was pretty close to 30 inches thick because there were a lot of things happening in that account and all the things that happened since the fire and the claim. So documentation is so important. So that's number one. Number two is data. Like an example here, wildfires here in California, the storms that have gone through the southeast, being able to reach out in the new technologies that we have, the agency Zooms and the other things like that, pre-disaster, when we know what's happening, wildfires we don't typically know, hopefully, storms and all that, but being able to reach out and say, like, for example, in my assessment, I do a map. I take the locations of all their insured properties and I plug it into a Google Maps and give them a visual of it and saying, here's everything exposed. So you could lay that over a map of the path of a hurricane, expected path, and do pre, being out there in advance, and then afterwards saying, were you affected and all that. So, but if you don't put your zip codes in when you're manually entering them, it's harder. Now I can do by city, but city's harder. Zip code the easiest, right? So that's one. Others, SIC codes and federal ID number, well, different thing. SIC codes and NAICS codes, because then you can match them up to the carrier's appetite and say, here's the markets we should be going to instead of shotgunning it out to all 20-year markets. Send it to the five that actually write the class, or maybe it's 10. So those are a couple little ways and things. And then when they're missing, we fix the cause and make it so we stop missing that data going forward. And then we can decide if we're going to go backwards and maybe we can use other technology resources if they're available to you, like the missing zip codes. We could, instead of manually logging into every customer, go into every policy and manually add in that zip code. Depending on the technologies available and the budgets, we might be able to do that via other resources like API. I don't write the APIs, but I have friends that do. And so instead of doing it manually and taking a year, say we do it at renewal, we clean them up and taking a year, we might be able to dump it in one fell swoop or a couple of small batches. Depends on the budget, depends on the needs. But yeah, that's kind of a couple different options or descriptions. There's much more to it, but I think those are good descriptives of it.
Okay. Um, Lately, I've been significantly more involved in the applied world than the Vertafore world. Although if Vertafore is listening, I would love to a media pass for NetView. Uh, so
Yeah,
so
first week of I think it's the first week of May. I have to look. It's it moves around anyways. Go
yeah,
ahead.
I've never been. Lately, I've been attending the Applied Net conference. So I'd love to check out NetView.
I'll see
Um,
if I can plant a seed in somebody's ear on that.
that'd be fantastic. So given that it's not my world right now, I hadn't heard before you mentioned that before we started recording about Vertafore Agency One. So what
Yeah.
is Agency One?
Well, if you're using multiple products, like let's say you're using AMS 360 and you're using Agency Zoom and you're using ImageRight WorkSmart, depending on what you want to call it. When they integrate in WorkSmart with 360 or ImageRight with 360, they call it WorkSmart, but it's just a name. They're all three different interfaces. They look different, they act differently, they do different things, and they use different terminology and different menus. So what Agency One is, when they first rolled it out, talking about it, I was impressed with it. I got a one-on-one demo on it a couple months back, and I was like, sign me up. And they did it with Sajida and ImageRight first, and then they're moving over now, supposedly in the month of December. And I said, you guys sure you're gonna drop something like this in the late part and the 20th of December? Are you guys crazy? But they said they were. Basically, in 360, we call the customer a customer. I'm not a fan of that word. I'd rather be client in my own world, but that's okay. And in ImageRight, it's called a file. So they're going to get it to where that common phraseology between all their products. It's going to be either this or that. And another example is in 360, we call a suspense, a reminder of suspense. In ImageRight, it's called a task. And other products are called a to-do. They're going to have one common phrase. So you don't have to take out a dictionary as you move. The second thing is they're going to make them look similar and have similar menus. So instead of ImageRight being the old version of ImageRight, the desktop, which most agencies and insurance companies are using, kind of looks like it looks very old, and it is. They're going to put those pieces together and make them look the same, similar menus, so it's easier to navigate. So instead of when you move between products, because they do different things, you got to pull a dictionary out or switch to that dictionary in your brain to say, this is what it calls here, this is what it called there, and have a little map. They're getting rid of that. It's a huge monster, but a good project, I think. Now,
Okay,
I'm not Vertafore. I'm a little biased, but I also have my moments when I'm honest. And when I saw it, I was like, when can I have this? When can I have this? When's this coming out? And so it's out there. It's starting. We'll see if it's. I'm gonna call somebody for an update in a couple of days here and see if it's still on track for December, or if somebody said no, we're not going to release something like this in the holiday season. Let's wait till January, maybe February. But either way, I'm happy for it.
okay. So it should be a good thing. I'm assuming that as with every tech update, uh, it's likely to cause some challenges. So,
Absolutely. It
so
should the whole goal is to remove some challenges, but yes, it's always going to make some
the
challenges.
transition, yeah, the
Yeah, yeah,
transition will likely bring some challenges uh, for which you're basically the best prepared person to help agencies with this kind of transition.
yeah. Well, yeah, exactly. Vertafore done a good job, a better job of improving their internal training and internal resources. So that's good. I'm happy. Makes my job a little easier and a little harder at the same time. But yeah, exactly. There were like any change, there's challenges. There's people that say, I like it the way it was. I get it. But you're gonna like it better this way eventually.
Once you,
How long that eventually
yeah,
gonna
once
be?
it's fully working and once you're used to it.
Yeah. And change is difficult. I don't care who you, well, for most people, change is difficult. There are a few crazy people out there that says, if you change something on me every day, I'd be happy. But those people are strange.
Yeah, your average human,
And I mean that in a good way.
yeah, your average human is definitely change resistant at
Yeah,
least.
yeah.
And insurance is generally staffed by risk averse people. Um,
It goes without saying. Yeah, yeah,
so it is, yes, changes are complex here at in our industry. Uh,
yeah,
and
definitely.
in the Zoom world, you're happy to work with agencies anywhere in the country.
Yeah, tend to be. I work with mostly west, west of the Mississippi, but one of the assessments I'm doing, the one I was going to have to postpone now, is in Minnesota. The one I just finished last week or the week before technically has a California mailing address, but I was dealing with somebody that was in the path of the hurricane in South Carolina. She Charleston-ish area, so it kind of skirted them. And other people in Minnesota and that one too, all over the country. In fact, I don't know. I think their owner is still in California, but the rest of their team is spread out. So and when that cuts down the new remote first, I'm going to say, has cut down on my travel a lot, as you can imagine. Because I mean, there was one agency I was training that I've had a long relationship with, and they call it Oakland, although they're not in Oakland anymore. The agency used to be in Oakland, but it's in the East Bay. And the last two employees I trained for them, one was in Yakima, Washington, and we had to postpone her training because there was a snowstorm and her computer was somewhere. They didn't, UPS couldn't say where it was. They just knew it was in the state. And we finally did it. And the other one was in another remote area east of San Diego. So, you know, that impacts my revenue, as you can imagine, because being on site is a bigger ticket. But it's the way it is. I don't, my dog doesn't, my dog is happy with that. I don't travel as much, but that's okay.
Allows you to serve more agencies also.
Yeah, exactly. Bouncing. But there's some days if I had three appointments scheduled, I'll be talking to one agency in the morning and then another one. And sometimes the brain gets, okay, who am I talking to? Get my scorecard out here, right? What are we talking about? What did we agree upon? So yeah, all over the country, although a significant portion of my client base is here in California.
All right. All right. So yes, listeners, if your agency runs on AMS 360 and it's not running as fantastically as you would like it to, or if you're bringing in new staff and you want them trained the best possible way, or if you're transitioning to AMS 360, here's your resource. Michael, when this goes live, I will tag you on the on LinkedIn. And yeah, thank you very much for your time today.
I appreciate one other thing to add in there is if you're integrating a new third-party resource and it's not working or the data missing, that's another one. I'm
Oh,
doing a
that's right.
lot of
I
that
didn't think
work.
of that. So yeah, as you bring any of the many new tools that the insurtech revolution is creating for us, uh,
Exactly.
and it's not integrating perfectly with AMS 360.
Yeah, and it's usually, by the way, bad workflow that leads to missing data. Almost exclusively, that's the reasoning for it.
Interesting. So it's
So
usually not about technology problem. It's a workflow
it's
problem.
it's usually a data problem driven by workflow problems. Yeah. Sorry. Didn't I wanted to make sure that was there because that's a big one. But
Okay.
yep.
I I guess it makes sense.
Yeah.
Uh, but diagnosing those things is very tricky because if this is the way my agency has always done it, right? It's the old story of the old fish asking the two young fish, how's the water today? And they're like, what's water? Right?
Yeah.
Like if this is the world you live in, you don't realize that if this is the way we've always done it, you probably don't realize that there's something in your workflow that's breaking the data. Uh,
Exactly right.
you need a third party who has seen a million of them to identify where where the rubber's not meeting the road.
Exactly right. Exactly right.
To mix as many metaphors as I could in there.
You did a good job of it.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thanks, Tony. Talk to you
Have a
later.
good one.
Okay.